Ladies and gentlemen, the Alabama Senate will now come to order. Our prayer today will be delivered by Senator Chris Elliott. Senator Elliott.
Thank you, Governor. The Lord be with you. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for your heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable industry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil. Defend from pride and arrogance every evil in our liberties, and fashion into one united people the multitudes brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endure with the spirit of wisdom those to whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in days of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail. All in which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Senator Elliott. Today the pledge will be led by Claire King. Claire is paging for Senator Roberts.
Attention, salute, pledge.
Thank you, Claire. Secretary, call the roll.
Mr. Albritton, Mr. Allen, Mr. Barfoot, Mr. Beasley, Mr. Bell, Mr. Butler, Mr. Carnley, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Chasteen, Ms. Coleman, Ms. Coleman-Madison, Mr. Elliott, Ms. Figures, Mr. Gavan, Mr. Gudger, Mr. Hatcher, Mr. Hovey, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Livingston, Mr. Melson, Mr. Orr, Mr. Price, Mr. Reed, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Schofield, Mr. Sessions, Mr. Shelnut, Mr. Singleton, Mr. Smitherman, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Stutz, Mr. Wagner, Ms. Weaver, Mr. Williams.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have 27 senators present, which is a quorum, and the Senate is ready to transact business.
Mr. President.
Senator Wagner.
Move that we excuse absent senators.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, so ordered.
Mr. President.
Senator Wagner.
Move that we dispense with the reading of the journal from the previous legislative day and that we adopt said journal.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. All right, first introduction of bills. I assume we don't have any introduction of bills. No committee reports. And then now, any motions or resolutions? All right, Senator Wagner.
Mr. President.
Senator Wagner.
Have a report from Committee on Rules.
All right, Secretary, read and receive the report from the Committee on Rules.
From the Committee on Rules, Special Order Calendar, Senate Resolution Number 7, be it resolved by the Senate of the Legislature of Alabama that immediately upon the adoption of this resolution, the following business in the order set forth below shall be the special and paramount order of business for the 5th legislative day, taking precedence over the regular order of business or any pending or unfinished business. On page 1, House Bill Number 5 by Representative Pringle relating to congressional districts.
Mr. President.
Senator Wagner.
Move the Senate adopt the report from the Committee on Rules.
All right, Secretary, call the long roll.
Mr. Albritton. Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot, Mr. Beasley, Mr. Bell, Mr. Butler, Mr. Conley, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Chastain, Ms. Coleman, Ms. Coleman Madison, Mr. Elliott, Ms. Figures, Mr. Gavan, Mr. Gudger, Mr. Hatcher, Mr. Hovey, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Livingston, Mr. Melson, Mr. Orr, Mr. Price, Mr. Reed, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Schofield, Mr. Sessions, Mr. Shellnut, Mr. Singleton, Mr. Smitherman, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Stutz, Mr. Wagner, Ms. Weaver, Mr. Williams,
23 ayes, 2 nays. The special order calendar is adopted. All right, Secretary, call the first bill on the calendar.
On page 1 of the calendar, House Bill number 5 by Representative Pringle relating to congressional districts. Committee substitute pending.
All right, Senator Livingston.
Mr. President, I move we adopt the committee substitute used in previous role.
No, long roll. Hold up, I want to speak to the committee substitute.
Okay, you're recognized.
So, Senator Livingston, this is the committee substitute based on taking out the community of interest and bringing in the Livingston plan.
Excuse me, yes, sir. I think it's a Livingston 2 plan, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, it's what now?
I think it's called the Livingston Congressional Plan 2, yes.
Yeah, Livingston Congressional Plan 2. And so we're going from the community of interest to Livingston Congressional Plan 2.
Yes, sir.
So, community of interest had a district to where the numbers were at least in the 40s. Your district, which you're substituting now, is decreasing the number down in the high 30s. So how does that help with what the court is ordering in dealing with the Voters' Right Act? Why would we be substituting a map that gives you a higher number for probability of that opportunity district versus a district that has a lower number where it lowers the threshold in that probability for you meeting what the court has asked us to meet? How do we go there?
As that plan was put together, or the Livingston plan was put together, it was put together using compactness and communities of interest without looking at the racial score at all when we put the community plan together. Emphasis on compactness and communities of interest.
But at the end of the day, you're going to get your compactness because we got to go zero deviation. You're going to get your compactness, your community of interest, and actually the court was clear in that for you to deal with two majority districts. And based on what you just dealt with, traditional principles of redistricting, does not address directly what the court was asking you to do. Because the court asked you to go in and directly deal with that. You went around what the court wants. It's almost like you're saying, we're going to find out where all the black folk are first, then we're going to draw our lines around them, and then we're going to go around everybody else. That's gerrymandering. And so it's almost like you saying now, we're going to look at compactness of interest, we're going to look at all these other things, and then we're going to look at the numbers to where they fall in terms of the opportunity district. You should be looking at where you're going to get the opportunity district from. Y'all should have been concentrating on 6 and a 7, and then not having to bother all of the other districts. It can be done, but to have it at a number to where it's only 30 some odd %, and you tell me you started with looking at compactness and communities of interest, but the task was to make sure that you get opportunity interest where African Americans can have the opportunity to win, or to vote for someone that they most likely think that will win. And that doesn't sound like those traditional principles were followed to me. You followed everything else. You did the rest of the stuff good, but for what the court asked us to do. That's where I am. And why did the threshold go from so let me say this then. So you're saying that the community of interest plan does not follow those traditional redistricting principles like compactness and holding whole counties together or allowing for those community of interest to be together. So the map that you traded out for didn't do that.
We feel like that the Livingston Congressional Plan does a better job of that, sir.
It does a better job, even though it lowers the threshold, even though it lowers the numbers.
The threshold being,
Well, even though it lowers the numbers, the percentages in CD2 than the community of interest map.
you're saying the BVAP, is that what you're saying it lowers?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you're 39%.
Well, we again, Senator, we drew it neutrally without the race card on the.
I understand that.
And did that way.
But that wasn't a task for the court, though. The task for the court was for you to go in and draw 2 districts that would give African Americans an opportunity to be able to have.
Senator, I wish the courts had given us a better definition of opportunity.
Well, still, whether or not it's opportunity, you still didn't go in to do the 2 districts, though. See, that's what I'm saying. You went in and took care of all the other traditional principles of redistricting, but you didn't go in to do the task that the court gave it, whether we understand what the opportunity is or not. Those are the lines that we should have been drawing and concentrating on. And so I know that wasn't concentrated on.
I think-
Now what you coming out with a 39%.
I think the courts told us to look at communities of interest. You know, they asked us to keep the black belt, and the plaintiffs have asked to keep the black belt.
See, I don't think you
in two
kept the black
different-
belt together. I think you split the black belt.
Well, it was currently in 3, I believe, three districts, and now it's in.
No,
2.
it's not currently in 3 districts. As of today.
Okay. Well, some of the plans had it drawn in 3, I should say. I can't remember which one. I was probably like you.
Some of those maps may have
Yeah, I was probably like you. I've looked at so many of them, they kind of run together after a little while. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I see all these maps that are taking the black belt and splitting them between 2 districts and then saying that they're kept whole, and you're not. Because there's something about those communities of interest that we have together that makes us powerful in our vote when we're all voting together. But when you start to put some in CD6 and others in 2, you're splitting us up. You're not giving us the full power of the vote of the black belt for those communities of interest. So, and I hear people talk about they're keeping us together, but you were taking us and you're splitting us between 2 districts. The black belt is not being made whole here. The black belt has enough problems on its own that it needs its own congressperson just to concentrate on those issues of the black belt.
And the black belt's so sprawling all the way from Pickens County over to Russell County, right?
Correct. That's 18 counties that they count as the black belt.
Plus the 5 that are sometimes are, sometimes aren't, by definition.
Well, but see, I was born and raised and live in the black belt. I know the real black belt,
The
okay?
18 core counties, yes, sir.
Right, I know the real black belt. And so all I'm saying is that those the counties that I see on your map now splits the black belt in 2 districts. That takes away the core of the strength of what we have in the black belt when you do that. because of communities of interest.
And I'd go back to the sprawl from Pickens County in West Alabama all the way to Russell on the east side.
I love it. We touch each other. We reach out and touch somebody's hand. We touch.
I believe there's a song about that, isn't there?
Yes. Yes, indeed. And so all I'm saying is that as a community of interest, and in your CD2, the performance of that, as I told you, we still haven't gotten the performability test here yet. We still don't know what those numbers are, but I can tell you some of your numbers.
You got them.
You know, but this is just a little base research that I did. The fact that in that district, Trump wins about 12%, about 12 points. You know, you got Dexter Grimsley that loses in that district. So it shows where someone who has the name recognition, has lived in there, and when polarization comes, when people go down by party line, they will not cross over. Therefore, the opportunity is not there. Dexter Grimsley had been in here, 2-3 terms. People made their choices. You're right, but it was all down party lines during that presidential election. You know, I look at the fact that you just don't have a whole lot of crossover votes in that area. So I can understand what you're trying to do is draw this district, but yet still give the Republican the opportunity to win. I got you. Because it is a opportunity district for a Republican. That it definitely is. Now, you could definitely count a black Republican if you want to say that. If you could say, well, the court didn't say it had to be a black Democrat, it could be a black Republican. And so you could possibly get you a black Republican to win that district. You possibly can. I just don't see a Democrat winning that district or even having the opportunity to based on the numbers, as high as they have the number in terms of the white voting age population in that district. We're not going to win there.
Again, Senator, I'd go back and I really wish the courts had defined the word opportunity a little better than they had. Give us a little more guidance.
And I understand that may be
a little more timeline.
And I understand that. I mean,
been compressed.
And it seems like that's going to be your repetitive answer, because you've been saying that ever since yesterday. It sounds like that's your go-to right now. But I'm just saying to you, your go-to is getting a little weak. It just it doesn't hold constitutional muster. Because the thing about it is whether or not the Supreme Court thought about it, what about you and I thinking about what's fair? And let us do it, not about what you think today is. So if you're telling me that you think that 39% is what's fair for me and my people, then that's what I need to accept. If you're telling me that that's what's fair, you and I could not change. We don't have to make sure what not their interpretation is. We can do the interpreting right here, because guess who hands it in right now? It is in our hand. It is not in the hands of the Supreme Court. We can do this. We don't have to worry about whether or not the Supreme Court gave us some firm definition on what an opportunity is. Let you and I define what an opportunity is, and let you and I put our own definition on what that opportunity is. Let you and I put our own vision into it, what that opportunity should look like. You and I can do that because we have the power right now, not the Supreme Court of the United States, not the Supreme Court of the state of Alabama. It's you and I. It's the 35 men and women that is in this body and the 105 men and women who are down in the house below us, the 140 of us who has a right to be able to vote, has a right to be able to say what that is. It is on us now. It's not on the Supreme Court, so don't let that be your go-to, because you can change that. We're the lawmaking body. They are just the interpreters of the law. We are the lawmaking body. Let us define what opportunity is now. Not about what the court would have left us with. You and I can do that right now. We have that power to do that. Let's define what opportunity is. You and I. Livingston and Singleton.
I think we're working on it right now.
No, come on, you got to give me some numbers. You got to give me something better than we working on it now. You You got to give me something a little bit better than that, because we can't keep saying that the court didn't explain what the opportunity is when you and I have the power to determine what the opportunity is. We can't blame the court for that. That's why they send it back to us, for us to do the right thing. For us to look at each other's humanity and be able to say what is right, who should have a voice. So obviously you're telling me me and my people shouldn't have a voice in Washington. We should not have a voice in Washington. We should not have anything to say because it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Y'all got one, you ought to be happy with one. Is that what you're telling me? Because the court obviously saw where there's a need for two or more. So why can't you and I just sit down and define what the opportunity is, what it looks like, and we go for it? Just like y'all have already probably drew a different map. Because when we go to conference, I'm sure some other stuff gonna come up that I haven't seen before. I know how all of that works too. So just as well as you did that, why can't we sit down and define what the opportunity is? You and I. Look at each other as men. Look at each other's humanity and say, Bobby, I think you deserve another voice. I'll say that, Steve, you're absolutely right.
You want to let some folks talk and you and I go back here and sit back?
Let's do that. And let's drop them out. Let's go down third floor and get the demographer. I bet you got him here. And let's go drop a map and come up with one. And let's define what is an opportunity. And then we can cut all this out. You just call over and tell the courts, look, we'll solve the problem. We don't need y'all to get involved in this because we've defined what the opportunity is.
I think we already have a standing appointment with the courts.
It's okay, but they would love a solution. That's why they put this pressure on us for Friday. Come on, you and I, let's do it. We can get past this, because if you respect my humanity as a human being to have a voice in this body or to have a voice in the state, we shouldn't even have to go through all of this, because of my friends and my colleagues should say yes. Let's run an example from the state of Alabama, because we believe that diversity is good. Everybody should have a voice, and we can be through with this. But we got to go through all of this just to have a voice in 2023. We don't have to go through all of this. So I'm going to yield to one of my colleagues who's up. You? Okay. I was standing up here laboring. Mr. President, I will yield to Senator Smith.
All right, Senator Smithman, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President.
You're recognized.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Senator.
Morning,
How you
Senator. I
doing?
get to see you coming down the hall this morning. So
Well, you know, most of the time we meet at the right place in the right time, you know, but I'm glad to see you and glad to get a chance to stand up here and talk with you. I read in part, I glanced through the court's order, and I noticed some things in there that the court talked about, and I noticed some things where you kind of rested. I don't want to speak for you, but this is my interpretation. Okay, I have to say it that way because I am not speaking for you at all. But you rested the basis for the map that you've put in as the substitute. You rest as the basis for it, the elements of things that you just mentioned. You mentioned about compactness. You talked about community of interest in particular. And then I noticed in part one of the controversies that's in terms of the chambers, and I make that clear. And the only reason I said that I'm talking about the majority, because it's not any confusion among the minority, you know. So, in what we think need to be done in terms of the map, and so they, if I quote it right, their interest is dealing with. They want to pack a few more people in the district and say, you know, that solves the problem. Well, I think that the underlying reasoning for both plaintiffs to coming is because there was, with a population, and I'm just rounding it off. Let me make sure everybody understand that. So I might run up here and say, no, it's 28.6, 27.9. No, so I'm rounding it off. So basically the court said that when in a state that has at least, rounding it off, 30% of the population is African American, then surely out of 7 districts, there ought to be an opportunity for them in general, and just for a person who is a Democratic voter in particular, to be able to have an opportunity for that person to elect a person of their choice as well. I think in part that is what is one of the main elements that's lacking in that plan, and that is an opportunity for a person to be elected. The second thing is that I think the fact that Jefferson County has been split up in such a manner to destroy its communities of interest, to separate them, to isolate them, and to force some of them into a community that does not have any interest whatsoever for them. And in part, for many of them, that's the fact of having to go back towards 6 as it sits now, so that the community of interest may lie, that I put it this way, the confidence from your map that you put in may be of such that meets the requirement for communities of interest. But I can assure you that Jefferson County, that map does not meet the definition of community of interest. The people, where they live in itself in that particular county is so diverse that even under the plan that you have now, that they have been isolated from their community of interest. The second thing is that the second thing in preserving whole county, we are able to provide the necessary district that will provide that opportunity for a Democrat, and the Democrat doesn't necessarily have to be an African American, but it would provide them an opportunity to win. Now, one of the things that and I want, anytime, Senator, you can chime in, I don't mind, okay? Because I will have a few questions as I get to a point, but this is not a thesis on my part. This is just sharing my observation, okay? So I want you to know that anytime. I still cannot understand how and why in the world that we have not received the functionality report whatsoever as it relates to the performance of the amendment.
Had a feeling you were going to ask that question.
Yeah. You got it?
Yes, sir.
So we finally got a copy of this functionality report. Is this for the district? Oh, that's what you got. I got you. Let's see what we got. Let's look at it. Now, I don't see necessarily. Yeah. Can you explain this? Because I'm trying, but I can't. Because I'm looking up at the top when I see Livingston 2, and so that must be this one right here that we.
One we're talking about, yes, sir.
Right here. But I can't tell on these numbers whether what race that we're talking about, and then I see some percentages over here, but I don't know what they go to. Thank you very much.
It's a little confusing.
It is. I'll say this at the moment about it in my hand. I'll just say that what I notice on here, and I don't, as we said, we could pinpoint and lay it out like the chart that I had. That made it a little simpler. But I do notice this. I do notice that we talk about an opportunity district, and I noticed that under the Livingston 2 plan, the number 1 category, they're talking about not number 1, but this is District 2. Under District 2, the AG's race Our present AG received 53.2%, and the Democratic candidate only received 46.8%. I noticed, let's see, wait a minute. Number two, I noticed, and I'm just looking at, I don't even know what race this is. Let me see, let me come back over here. Let's see if it come over here, let's see. I noticed, I think that's the auditor's race. In the auditor's race, that's what I see right there. I don't know. I'm not sure. Now that's, hey, moments of confession about the date. I'm not sure, Senator. I'll take whatever you tell me though, because I don't know. But under the auditor's race, and that's auditor. The Democrat received 45% of the vote, and the Republican candidate received 55% of the vote. That's under the present structure of this district right now. Regardless, of course, we know the racial makeup is not 50 plus, but that didn't change. That wouldn't change what these results show based on these percentages of voters that they have laid out here that voted under that scenario in those precincts as it's configured at this particular time. Now, in addition to that, and we could go on some of the other races, because, but it doesn't show. I don't see. And I stand to be corrected, but I don't see any particular significant area where a Democratic candidate outpolled the Republican candidate in that particular district to the way it's configured right now. Now, of course, you know, I when I get a few minutes, if I can, to present a map again, and the reasons being, and I'll say this so you can understand it, that we are now really working with the House bill. I know it's your sub on the House bill, but that's last time we were working actually with your bill.
Yes,
you know, so that's why if it was actually your bill per se, which in essence it deals with the sub, but if it was physically a SB bill, it wouldn't be necessary to do that. You see what I mean? But we're being an HR, and I just said that it would be more of an abbreviated form of my presentation, just to let you know that it's some things I don't have to be repetitive on, okay? But in the case, what I was saying here is that I just give you some numbers that I have to give you an idea. In the district, that's the way that it's configured now, and I'm gonna just take two races because that's all that I can take as a measuring stick, and that is that the 2012 presidential election in the District 6 as being an opportunity district. President Obama, who is probably one of the most popular in modern time Democratic candidates, and I'm talking about in the Singleton 3 plan and in the I think it's the CLC plan. In both of those, where it keeps Jefferson County whole, primarily. The 2012 election, it voted 53.2% Democrat in that particular race. In the 2012 election, in the configuration of what District 2 is right now, you had President Obama only received 45.69%, and that's of the two parties' votes. In 2020, in Doug Jones, at the time he was a senator, in his race in District 6, the Opportunity District, he received, as a Democrat, 58.2% of the vote. However, in the configuration of District 2 as it stands now, he receives 46.19% of the vote. Now, the significance of this is that there's no way whatsoever that a Democratic candidate, it be white or black, an African-American candidate, is going to stand a chance of being able to win in that district. The course talked about it being an opportunity for the minority population to have an opportunity to get a candidate of their choice elected. That's not going to happen in that particular situation. And the numbers bear it out, even though we had kind of asked for these numbers earlier in a more concise form, but we have not received those. We did get this, but I still don't know what this means. And and I stay ready to accept if they'll send us one of them little sheets that break down everything. I think that would be helpful. But also those were some of the numbers that I wanted to share with you. I will share with you at this time some of the things that I observed in the order itself. Well, first, before I say that, I want to say again is that I think that it is very, very saddening that we could not get a true functionality report versus even there's a set of numbers that does not address the likelihood of and percentage-wise as the chance for a Democrat, African American, or an African American, an opportunity to be elected in this district. As what's been said is that it really is an opportunity district, but an opportunity for the Democrat or African American to lose. It's really structured in such a manner with the performance of those voters in those districts that the district is going to continue to vote in such a manner that opportunity won't be there for them to get elected. In other words, it's really a status quo district because it's going to maintain status quo as it relates to representation in Congress, and that's what I'm beginning to see very clear through the numbers that they're trickling in each day about the functionality of that district, and each number coming in is substantiating what I'm saying right now. I'm going to share with you quickly the district court has held that any plan the legislature enacts must give black voters the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice in 2 districts. Except for Doug Jones in 2017, no Democrat has received more votes than the Republican in this plan before us now in any important election, at least since 2012. In 2020, President Donald Trump won in this plan here in District 2, President Trump won by 12 points, which of course that tells us all we need to know, that none of those people are flipping back over and voting for some Democratic candidate. That's not going to happen. That's just that simple. It's not going to happen. You can put That's the way the district is configured right now that we're getting ready to vote on. And he wins by 12%. So it's nowhere to go. It's nowhere to go in there for the opportunity for anybody else of any persuasion to have a chance to win. Now, in the courts, I'm gonna just highlight a few little things for you, Senator, in here with the order, because you were nice enough yesterday to get the people up there, and they got me a copy of the order. I want to thank you. I want to thank you publicly for doing that.
We do a really good job of burning paper here, don't we?
We do. But I want to thank you, because as chairperson, that's, you did what a chairperson would do. And I wanted to say thank you very much. As I look in these orders, in the very beginning, and it's on page 1, and I'm just going to highlight some points in it. I'm not getting ready to. This thing is entirely too long. We'll be here till Christmas, trying to verbally read it word for word out on the floor. But I'm going to highlight a few things. On page 1, it says the findings that the plan likely violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Then, as I went through and had a cursory look, I noticed it talked about, it's saying, after, this is on page 8 at the bottom, it said, after reviewing that extensive record, the court concluded in a 227-page opinion that the question whether HB 1, like, and that's the bill that we passed out of here and sent, said that was the right district, which is, it wasn't. So HB 1, it said that the question whether HB 1 likely violated Section 2 was not a close one. It did. And it said the court thus preliminarily enjoined Alabama from using HB 1 in forthcoming elections. Now, on page 9, it said that, and this is the order, and y'all got a copy of it. It says that the district court found that plaintiffs with an S, and I demonstrate with the S, demonstrated a reasonable likelihood of success on their claims that HB 1 violated Section 2. The court said, we affirm that determination. So the district court has told you, the Supreme Court said they affirmed that determination that most likely violated it. Now, on page 10, it talks about some standards and what it takes to that they were looking at. Now, one of the things that the district had to show, the map that we gotta present to the courts has to show that the minority group must be able to show that it is politically cohesive. The minority must be able to demonstrate that the white majority votes sufficiently as a bloc to enable it to defeat the minority preferred candidate. That's the orders. Now, what that means is this. That means, in my interpretation, I'm not the judges, but in my interpretation, that means just what I just got through saying. Is that they the functionality report shows whether or not their pattern of voting would be of such that it would block a minority candidate from having an opportunity to succeed and be elected. And what I just showed about under that District 2, that President Trump would win by 12%, tells you that the block vote is sufficient to deny any candidate, Democrat, minority, African American, from having a ghost of a chance of winning. The margin of error is usually about 4%. It ain't no error when you're talking about 12%. And that's the reason I read that. This is straight out the order. So if we don't do that, we're saying as a body, we ignoring what the court is telling us to do. I mean, it ain't, it's not something that we gotta analyze and come up with our opinion of what we think the court means by that. The court states it right here. This is page 10. It's clear. Just as clear as it is, I read it off of here. That just is clear what they're telling us what we got to do. And then of course, a plaintiff who demonstrates these preconditions, it says must show under the totality of circumstances that the political process is not equally open to minority voters. That's why we got here in the first place. Next, in here at the bottom of it, it talks about. It says that it talks about the political cohesiveness, and then it says that that in that political cohesiveness, it has to show that a representative of the minority group, a representative of its choice, would in fact be elected. Well, it ain't nothing the way that's configured that we gonna be able to put our hat on and talk about we know that they got an equal chance to be elected. Now, on page 11, it says, as noted, the district court concluded that plaintiff's claim was likely to succeed. And once again, it said, based on our review of the record, we agree. I think that when you being a coach, one of the things that we try to do is to go back to the fundamentals. And when you are trying to define a law, you should go back to the elements of that law. The court has laid out the elements that we need to follow. We are not going blindly in the dark, saying they haven't given us any directives. Here's directives sitting right here in the order. Right here in the order. It's saying, over here, it talks about, let's see, it says that Section 2 prohibits states from imposing any standard practice or procedure in a manner which results in a denial or abridgment of the right of any citizen to vote on account of race or color. This is in order now. I want everybody to understand. This is something, I'm not finding, this is not some opinion and comment stuff. This is in the order on page 16 at the bottom. Start there. Then you go to the top. He said what that means. Section 2, it said, goes on to explain is that the political processes in this state must be equally open such that minority voters do not have less, I repeat, that minority voters do not have less opportunity than other members of the electorate to participate in political process. And see, this is the part that district does not provide. We're thinking that we bag up a bunch of numbers, they got the opportunity to participate. But it said the opportunity to participate and to elect representatives of their choice. Of their choice. That's the key element that's missing from this plan in front of us, the plan down in the House. They talk about saying that's the key element that's missing. I've heard conversations about the split of the corner of area here and that, but I haven't heard anybody other than people who presented some different maps talk about this aspect of it right here. And if you're looking for it, you don't have to look for what I just said. It's on page 17, right at the top of the orders. And if anybody need a copy of the order, I happen to have 2 copies. So I'll be glad to get it if they just mark on their sheet these pages, because I want them to read it and be familiar with these things that I'm sharing. Now, the on page 20, at the bottom, last paragraph, it talks about forcing proportional representation is unlawful and inconsistent with this court's approach to implementing. So the numbers better point out well. At the congressional level, the fractional of districts in which black preferred candidates are likely to win is currently below the black share of the eligible voters population in every state but 3. All right? And that's what got us in court right there, with one representation with 30% of the population. And we have 7 people representing us. Even under the scenario that we had 6, we would have been due to opportunities to elect someone. I'm on just making sure that some other areas that I want to highlight, if so be it, I'll let you know that in just a second. But the point I was making here is simply this: is that number one, this district, the 2nd district, does not provide any opportunity for Democrats, white or black, for African Americans, and any other minorities to have an opportunity to succeed at election. There's not anything been presented to us that would refute what I said whatsoever. To that degree, there has not been anything to show that the elements that is being expounded and considered would meet what the court has asked us to do. No one can say anymore that they don't know what the court wants us to do. It's not clear. I made it very clear today. No one can say that the court didn't say that that's what they want us to do. It's right here in the orders. And once again, if you did not keep up with the pages, I assure you that I'll be glad if you bring your set of the orders from the court. I'll sit down with you so that I can help you highlight it so that you can see for yourself, and you will have documentation to support what you be saying when you say that this is what the court said we were supposed to do. So once again, I hope that we get some better information from the our reapportionment committee or thereabout, from the attorneys who are working, or the person who's drawing the maps, as was stated yesterday in committee, that even this new map that they talking about drawing, they had to sit down and do that. Now, I know that it can be done because if not nothing else, they're sitting there now. I can tell you exactly what they're doing now. They're sitting there now, and they're moving precincts around so that hopefully that they can get the reflection of the percentages they want, and they're going to say that they moved them around and they didn't take race into consideration. Well, let me say this. If they didn't take it in there, that's fine. They weren't supposed to, except in an isolated situation. But without the functionality report, there's no way you're going to know how that district performed, because whether they knew or didn't know that they moved a certain number of African Americans in a district, is that when you see these statistics that I showed here, and that is that under the way that district is configured, that there's no African American that had a chance to win, but whatsoever, and that President Trump outpolling the district that it stands now by 12 percentages. It's not an opportunity. And you know what the key elements of this, as I conclude, and the senator from Mobile, I'll yield to her, is that the one element I want everybody to understand is that when I talk about these districts, take for instance, when I talk about District 6 being the whole county, being Jefferson County, that county is only 45% African American. So we are saying that not only that, is that even in similar area, the similarity of the makeup of the two districts in terms of the African American population itself is similar. They're trying to push you to 42% in this. That's 45%. But yet in there, the opportunity for a Democrat, white or black, the opportunity for an African American, and the opportunity for a minority is significantly outweighs through the performance, and show that it can be done if they are a good candidate, and of course how well they address the issues. So I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to have a little discussion, about my observation, and being able to share with the members, in fact, what the orders actually said. And I didn't paraphrase them, and I didn't give my own interpretation. I just read the words straight out of the order, and I hope that will be taken in consideration before we have a finality of the maps that we've drawn that will be presented to us as we go forward. Thank you very much, and at this time, if you will, I'll also yield to Senator Figurs. She would like to have some further discussion with you regarding the map.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, and I
Senator Figurs,
always welcome
Mr. President.
Senator
Yeah. All right, thanks. I think your time's about expired. Is that? She can just start on her own time. Yeah. All right.
May I be recognized?
Sure.
I don't think this is a filibuster, and we're doing it at times. I don't think that's the understanding. I might be up here with you all, but that ain't the understanding out here. This
Oh, it has nothing to do with out there.
I just want to make an announcement.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is not a filibuster. I mean, this is clearly our concerns that we're expressing about this. I want to make that clear. We hadn't kicked in, nobody kicked in no kind of filibuster mode.
No, I know. So we just gotta,
I just want, because when you said time, we could,
real quick, just so we keep the time, right? I just don't
Okay.
want to recognize her and her only have a minute to talk. So she can, go up there. So that's why I said we can just recognize her start her new hour, and she can talk as long as she needs.
This, and then I'm gonna sit down. I thought that he was yielding. He's got the mic.
No, I recognize
said-
Senator Singleton had the mic. I recognized him, and then he yielded to you.
Okay, then I'm trying to get a point of clearance.
Okay.
More than a challenging a point of order. And I use my own self, I won't use the senator. If I've if I'm sponsoring a bill and I'm standing up here and that senator come up and say, I want to have dialogue, I'm asking, I'm not saying that was the way it was approached last time or nothing. And I asked him, I said, I would like to have dialogue with you regarding, I mean, he tells me he want to have dialogue with me regarding the bill and what I'm saying there. Then is he on the clock because he's having dialogue? Now, I don't mean, I know that he asked for the mic and you gave him the mic, so I'm not talking about that. I'm not confused with that. But let me tell you what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get it clear so when I come up here, I can come up and talk and I ain't on the mic. And so that's why I'm asking the question. I know I was then, but I'm just saying that if he comes up and I'm the sponsor, if this was the same bill, and he said, I want to have dialogue with you, then does that automatically throw him on the clock?
Right, yeah, so he would have an hour in that
The
situation.
dialogue on my time, and I'm the sponsor?
No.
That's what I'm saying. That's my question. That's my question. If I'm the sponsor and I'm up here explaining my bill, and he said, I want to ask you some questions about your bill. And from there, we start our dialogue about those questions. Then does that he kick on time because he came up here and said, I got to ask you some questions about your bill?
Senator Smitherman, we want to hear everything you've got to say, Senator.
Right, yeah, we're going to make sure we're
I
doing
want
that.
you to-
So.
No,
I want you to
I wasn't
say
saying it that way, y'all. I'm trying to be clear because if that doesn't kick on, that doesn't mean that I got to start on the clock because I want to come up here and talk to somebody.
The only thing that started the clock was just when Senator Singleton wanted to be recognized. That was it.
You answer my question.
Okay.
I'm just
Got
as
it.
straight as an arrow
Yeah.
now. When you
All right.
make that statement,
And then-
I'm together.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much.
All right.
And I understand what you're saying, Senator, is that I knew that I could appeal to the group to ask you to suspend the rules and allow me, but I would just want to know if I came up here, and he answered the question for me, though.
Thank
And I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Figurs.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
All right, Senator Figurs,
Thank you, Mr. President.
do you want to be recognized?
Yes, please.
All right,
so
you're
I can,
recognized.
I just have some comments.
Sure,
I won't
yeah,
be very-
absolutely.
I won't be very long.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to point some things out and make sure that it's on the record that the Supreme Court's order stated that the standard is 2 or more districts where black voters have an actionable opportunity to elect their candidate of choice, their words. Or, these are also the Supreme Court's words, 2 majority-minority districts are quite close to it. In the Livingston plan, there are some findings that I want to point out when you did the amendment, offered the amendment for your plan, for the Pringle plan. And this would be the Livingston plan. And one of those dealt with the communities of interest. There are also some things in the Livingston plan that hasn't been called out, and I feel that we need to discuss them. The Livingston plan included, in addition to the map itself, 4 pages of legislative findings that appear as an attempt to codify the majority's theories on redistricting. These findings are labeled as, quote, non-negotiable for the legislature. Why would we ever put anything like that language in a bill to be codified? The finding number 1 is dealing with communities of interest. The Livingston Plan defines communities of interest as, quote, a defined area of the state that may be characterized by, among other commonalities, shared economic interests, geographic features, transportation infrastructure, broadcast and print media, educational institutions, and historical or cultural factors, end quote. However, the Supreme Court's record shows that according to Alabama's current districting guidelines is, and quote, that it is an area with recognized similarities of interests, including but not limited to ethnic, racial, economic, tribal, social, geographic, or historical identities, end quote. Why are we moving the goalposts on communities of interest? Why do all of this work to set up this new idea of community of interest, which the federal courts already found not to be a compelling reason to avoid splitting the Gulf Coast if that split is necessary to satisfy the Voting Rights Act? And that's why we're here, to satisfy the Voting Rights Act. Finding number 2 deals with the maximum county splits. The Livingston legislative findings also require no more than 6 county splits. But the findings go on to admit in the next sentence that 6 splits is, quote, the minimum number necessary to achieve minimal population deviation among the districts, end quote. Limiting us to 6 county splits either forces us to have a population deviation or to cut the Mobile Black population away from the rest of the Black population in that geographical area. It's amazing that the plaintiff's map splits 7 counties, but you cut it off in your bill with 6. This is despite the Mobile Black population being compact and contiguous to the Black Belt Black population. And since the Livingston findings also require minimal population deviation, we know which way this decision goes. This map thus cuts off the Mobile population. Finding number 3, dealing with specific communities of interest. The Livingston Plan findings also label and define 3 communities of interest: the Black Belt, the Gulf Coast, and the Wiregrass. The findings say they split the Wiregrass to preserve the Black Belt. But what the findings leave out is they define Barber County as a member of both communities of interest, Black Belt and Wiregrass. This does 2 things. 1, it acknowledges the overlap of communities of interest, such as found in Mobile/Black Belt. 2nd, either way you're going, you're splitting 2 communities of interest, Black Belt into 2 districts and Wiregrass into 2 districts, per your own definitions. And you're splitting that Black Mobile County population, which we consider to be a split from its contiguous Black Belt population. You could instead split the northern part of Mobile County, keep the majority of Mobile County with all other counties on the southern border of the state, and satisfy the Voting Rights Act. And that is what the federal courts found to be compelling. That is what they clearly favored, and that is what we clearly favor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Figures. All right, Senator Singleton.
Mr. President, I come back to speak on the Livingston Congressional Plan 2. Is that correct?
2.
2.
Yes, sir.
That is up for us to look at. And this map didn't come out. There was no way that the public had to vet this map, as we've done all the other maps. We had no vetting of this map, and I've still been trying to work the numbers. I sit up last night a while trying to work the numbers just to see whether or not if we're actually stuck with this map by some means, because it's gonna probably, I already know it's gonna probably get voted out of here. If it's something that we have to live with, and try to have to work through. This is the old classic case of you won, but you really didn't win. Because you really didn't win because you ain't in control of the narrative. So just because the court said you won, I still control the narrative. And so when you control the narrative, you get to draw what you want. I understand that. He who king get the rule. Okay? I understand that. So just by saying you won, everybody get all excited, but I understand I don't control the narrative. All right? So I'm just asking for those who do control the narrative is to do me right. Just do me right. Because the map that's sit up there now, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to lose. That's what it is. Ain't no opportunity for to win. Now, again, I come back and say, we can get us a good black Republican, and you can probably go there and folks will cross over. If he's the only one in the primary, they'll win. And you were satisfied with what the court has said, I guess. But to give the average Alabamian black the right to win in that district, those numbers are not going to do it. It's 38%, 39%. And I know what it's sitting up for. Because, see, when I read the Attorney General's letter that he sent to the committee, the numbers that you are presenting now correlates with the numbers that he argued that the plaintiffs were arguing at the Supreme Court. So he want to get it back before the Supreme Court so he could just gut up Section 2 so we won't even have Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act just like we don't have Section 5 anymore. And that's a shame. That's a shame. And I am embarrassed that we're about to set that up for him. So he can take this map or whoever and set it up for him. We're teeing it up for him to go in and take the voice from people that stood for the last 55, 60 years since the Voting Rights Act. And so we are now beginning to have to fight. It's already just crazy that African Americans have to go through so much struggle in this country and in this state just to be able to have the right to vote still. We're the only race of people that still has to go back and get some permission from the federal government under the Voting Rights Act for it to be renewal for us to be first-class citizens. It is sad that this day and that the humanity of man still doesn't matter, that you want to treat me like chattel. And so we shouldn't even be having this conversation about in 2023 whether or not there could be another voice for African Americans at the congressional level. It should be automatic. Alabama should be saying, yeah, we're okay, the court ruled we were wrong, we're gonna right the wrong, let's go on and do it. And just solve it, be through with it. But no, we wanna go through this whole process playing cat and mouse games, trading maps when you're in the supermajority, trading maps in the night, through the night, don't know what's going on. Somebody probably drawing new maps, probably gonna see a brand new map before all of this is over with. And when we could have been involved in it. Where's the fairness in that? Are we gonna forever just play political games, or are we gonna be fair with our fellow man?
So, Senator, again, we had this opportunity to talk at the microphone a couple of times and in committee a couple of times. Is the court had given us a little bit better directive of where we were headed and what a better definition of opportunity would have helped all of us to be better able to do through this process. And it may be that our opinion what of an opportunity is different than yours, and we're working in that direction. And I guess we're in the old process of making sausage here in the legislature.
Mr. President.
Senator Reed,
Mr. President, may I be recognized?
you're recognized.
Mr. President, I think we have a House message that I would like to receive.
All right, we're on this, so we need to, you want to carry this over at the call of
I'd
the
like
chair?
to carry this over to the call of the chair with the permission of the two gentlemen that are at the microphone.
All right, any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. HB 5 is carried over to the call of the chair. All right, and then next thing you'd like to do is House message, is that correct? Is that correct, Senator Reed? House message?
House message,
All
yes,
right,
sir.
Secretary, call the first House message.
Message from the House. Mr. President, the House of Representatives has amended, as therein shown and is amended, has passed the following Senate bill and returned same herewith to the Senate. Senate Bill number 5 to provide for reapportionment and redistricting. Signed, John Treadwell, Clerk.
Mr. President,
Senator Reed.
Mr. President, I'm going to make the motion on this House bill that we non-concur and go to conference.
Okay. Would you like to use long roll?
Do we need to use the long roll? Long roll.
Okay. All right. Secretary, call the long roll.
Mr. Albritton. Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot. Mr. Beasley. Mr. Bell. Mr. Butler. Mr. Carnley. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chasteen. Ms. Coleman. Ms. Coleman Madison. Mr. Elliott. Ms. Figures. Mr. Gavan. Mr. Gudger. Mr. Hatcher. Mr. Hovey. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Livingston. Mr. Melson. Mr. Orr. Mr. Price. Mr. Reed. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Schofield. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Shelnut. Mr. Singleton. Mr. Smitherman. Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stutz. Mr. Wagner. Ms. Weaver. Mr. Williams.
Thirty ayes, 0 nays. The conference committee is Senator Livingston, Senator Schofield, Senator Smitherman. All right. Senator Reed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I think we have another message.
All right. Secretary, call the next House message.
Message from the House. Mr. President, the House of Representatives has amended, as therein shown and is amended, has passed the following Senate bill and returned same herewith to the Senate. Senate Bill number 3, relating to local laws. Signed, John Treadwell, Clerk.
Mr. President,
Senator Reed.
there's been quite a bit of discussion on this particular legislation. I understand from some other discussion with the local sponsor and members within the body that we are in a position of concurrence related to the ideas of what the House has done. So I'd make a motion at this point that we concur with the House and we can call the long roll.
Okay. Do you want to speak? All right, Senator Smith.
Because, thank you, Mr. President, because it's been such a moving target, I just want to know what we concurring to. I want to say it this way. I realize from the most serious nature why we got to deal with this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want everybody to understand that I ain't confused that we got to deal with this because it's a lot out there, for everybody in here. And so I wanted everybody to know that we understand the complexity and the seriousness. But I just want to know
Senator,
what came out in the end.
My understanding is that you will remember we had this legislation for all the reasons that you're well aware of, came to us to deal with. There was some question about it as we tried to understand it. We in the Senate added an amendment to it that many said did or did not do something. Then it got to the House. The House took the amendment off, so the bill is back just like it was when it was with us to start with. So the idea would be that we would be concurring with what was the original bill, which is what the House has sent back to us.
And I don't remember.
Well, and the original bill basically said we've got the BIR.
I remember that.
On local bills.
Right.
And so the question with our amendment was to basically say it's okay local bills, but if it's a constitutional amendment, we want to have it be different because we're going to add, that was the amendment we added.
Okay.
Then after more discussion, it was like, well, wait a minute, if it's a constitutional amendment, we're going to have that number of votes anyway.
Correct.
So the House said, why are you doing this? And the answer was, well, we thought it was a good idea at the time.
To have 21 and 21 for the amendments.
You're right.
But so now, based on what we got back now, is just, we're not 21 and 21 for the amendment because we got to have 21 to get the amendment anyway.
Correct.
Okay, and then we're taking it off as the bill presented itself.
Yeah, on the local bills.
Okay, all right, well, Mr. President, I'll yield back and I just tell you my vote is yes for what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, you want to use the long roll on
Mr.
this?
President, I'd say we use the short roll unless there's an objection.
All right.
I don't know that there is.
Any objection to using previous roll? Hearing none, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Strawbritton. Mr. Williams.
Thirty ayes, 0 nays. The Senate concurs on Senate Bill 3.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this time, we'd carried the bill over to the call of the chair to allow us. Now the conference committee that was appointed can begin its work, and then I'm going to ask for that legislation, which was Chairman Pringle's bill. I don't know the number, Mr. President, but that bill be brought back from the call of the chair.
All right, Secretary, call House Bill 5, please. Thank you, Senator Reed.
On page 1 of the calendar, House Bill number 5 by Representative Pringle relating to redistricting. Committee substitute pending.
All right, back to you, Senator Singleton.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the proper time, I'm going to just reiterate and offer my map one more time without going through a lot of that explanation because it's already on the record. Just want it on the record again. That will deal with 2 districts that we feel that are opportunity district that deals with all the traditional redistricting principles, wholeness, compactness, making sure the whole counties, and giving an opportunity for African Americans to be able to win in 2 districts. And so we'll do that and get a vote up or down on it again for the record. And so, again, I think that this bill that we have before us does not give us an opportunity to win. Yeah, we're gonna offer this amendment to HB 5, and again, it'll be for a vote as we need to show the record And
Senator Singleton, we need to do something on the substitute first before we can bring an amendment.
okay, all right,
So-
let's go and move the substitute.
Using
Get it
long
in
roll?
order.
Okay.
Long roll, please.
All right, Secretary, call the long roll.
Mr. Albritton. Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot. Mr. Beasley. Mr. Bell. Mr. Butler. Mr. Carnley. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chasteen. Ms. Coleman. Ms. Coleman Madison. Mr. Elliott. Ms. Figures. Mr. Gavan. Mr. Gudger. Mr. Hatcher. Mr. Hovey. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Livingston. Mr. Melson. Mr. Orr. Mr. Price. Mr. Reed. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Schofield. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Shellnut. Mr. Singleton.
No.
Mr. Smitherman. Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stutz. Mr. Wagner. Ms. Weaver. Mr. Williams.
Twenty-four ayes, 6 nays. The committee substitutes adopted. All right, Senator Singleton.
Mr. President, I'd like to offer a substitute, an amendment to HB 5.
All right, Secretary, read and receive the amendment, please.
Does that match?
Amendment to House Bill 5 by Senator Singleton, following lines 19 through 21 on page 1 with the following. Thereafter, until the release of the next federal census. Delete lines 23 through 192 on page 1 through 7 and renumber the remaining sections accordingly. Replace line 202 on page 8 with the following. Singleton Congressional Plan 1 through 2023, including the.
All right, Senator Singleton.
Thank you, Mr. President. And what we have before us is the same map that we had yesterday that showed Jefferson County being one district by itself that bleeds off into a little bit of the Shelby County, picking up about 43,000 people in that district, making that one whole district. Coming to Tuscaloosa, split Tuscaloosa, and the rest of the Black Belt all the way over to except Russell County. And I think Monroe County is not in there. So we look at keeping the Black Belt whole in one district. You're coming in and you're making Jefferson County whole where splits had been done in Jefferson, and all the other 4 districts, 2, 4, and 5 are the same just as we have in the 2021 map. So we kept all those communities of interest together, and so that's a map about 55% Democratic lean in District 6 and a 59% district lean in District 7, and for Democratic lean in District 7. We've seen the #1 crossover votes in Jefferson County and Birmingham. We've had examples since 2012. Every presidential election, Jefferson County has gone blue. The Black Belt has gone blue. and it showed that this is the best place for the opportunity in those two districts to be able to bring out what the court actually wanted to see us do to satisfy the Voting Rights Act and to be able to give the opportunity for African Americans to have a voice in Congress. And I think that this is the better map to be able to show that, and at the proper time we'll vote up or down. I think we're kind of just strolling along some time right now. And I wish that we could, just have at least gotten together and sit down and kind of talk about it. But I know that sometimes Washington get in our way. And, we get in our way, and folks up top wants to make sure that everything around here is done the way that they want to do. But we were given the ultimate task to be able to draw these maps. And I think that we could have sit down, came up with something. We didn't have to have no surprises, as we probably going to get here today. Something in my gut feel like we could get something like the old AAA Act. You go in with 3 pages and come out with 30 pages. So I think we're going to come out with a whole different map that nobody's seen, the public hadn't seen. We don't have time to vet it, don't know the probability numbers. And it'll go before the court. I think that it's numbers that are going to be set up to try to get the Attorney General going to try to get this case back in 2024, back before the Supreme Court, and try to get a different ruling on it. And maybe somebody would have twist a few of the Republican justices' hand, or maybe make them feel like they embarrassed them here in Alabama because they went this way this time on the preliminary injunction. And so, and all of this is about gutting Section 2. To get rid of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, you eliminate the people who you think that you can eliminate from voting, but, we're going to continue to vote. We're going to continue to vote in mass numbers. We're going to continue to have a voice. And so that's why we got to keep working, because I know if one don't want us to have a voice in Washington, D.C. today, you may not want me to have a voice here in Montgomery tomorrow. So I got to fight for, I just got to fight to keep understanding why if I can't have a voice in Washington, then my voice in Montgomery is in trouble. And so the next lawsuit will be filed is to get rid of my voice out of Montgomery. And so we got to continue to fight and make this thing something that we need to do. And I'm okay with people playing partisan politics. We all do that at some time. But sometimes I think that we just have to stop to think about what is it best for our state, not just our party, but what's best for us moving forward in a global economy, in a global world, to make sure that we are all represented at all. Again, I preach about diversity. Diversity is good for our state. Our state led a lot of this whole movement and why people are working together across the country. It looked like everybody else benefited from the Civil Rights Act but Alabama. I heard the story of two great things happened in Selma, Alabama. You had in 1865, you had the end of the Civil War happen right there in Selma. And here in 1965, you had the birth of the Civil Rights Movement. So I think that, we've done some great things here in Alabama historically that was moving this nation forward and having the responsibility to be able to set example on what a nation is to be, even though we tore through those painful days and nights of making it happen, but yet and still Alabama was standing forward, from the bus boycotts to the March on Washington. We and Alabamians led all of that. And so here we are today, standing on these hollow grounds of this state where Section 5 got gutted. Now they're going after Section 2, and all of that's to say to African Americans in this state that we don't want your participation in a participatory democracy. But we're here, and we're here to stay, so you might as well get used to it. and give us our voice is going to be heard. And so we too poor to be quiet. I tell you, we poor. We can't afford the OR. So we too poor to be quiet. So we're going to always have a voice, whether you want to give us that voice or not, because we have the freedom and the right to speech, and we're going to have that voice whether you want to hear it or not. So you might as well go on and give it to us. You might as well go on and settle this thing and let us just do it. Do what's right. Do what's right by humanity. The court has given us, while you keep talking about the interpretation of, well, the court doesn't say what opportunity really is. We have the right to define what an opportunity is right now. We can do that. We don't have to wait on the courts. Let us do that right now. Define what is an opportunity district, and let's put it on a map and do the right thing. Now we're finna go into a conference. We either gonna go into the conference and come out with nothing, or we're gonna come out with something new. It's gonna be something new, I believe, more than nothing. And when the courts see it today, for the very first time, as we are gonna see it for the very first time on the minority side, it's a shame. It is sad that the supermajority has to go behind walls trying to draw a map to keep us voiceless. That's a shame. That's a shame, sister. It's a shame. You can jump in on this conversation if you like. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
No, he's got the mic. You're recognized for discussion. Yeah, absolutely. So
Thank you so much. You know, I'm listening to you, to the senator, and I was reminded that in 2019, I passed a measure to remove the racist language from the Alabama State Constitution from this body. Unanimous consent from both the House and the Senate. And then we ended up having that on the ballot in 2020 and in 2022. It was a lengthy process. And as I was going around the state of Alabama talking about that measure, I was so proud of us. And even when I did national news, talking about how proud I was of the state of Alabama and saying that we are a 21st century Alabama. You know, we're going to show everybody that we are a 21st century Alabama. And so, again, I was proud when in 2020 and in 2022, the people of the state of Alabama overwhelmingly supported that measure by more than almost 70%. But in this body, though, unanimous, bipartisan support. So now, though, when we get to this issue, when we're talking about more fairness and equity, I've been quite disappointed. And one of the ways I've been disappointed is in the process itself. And I'll just say it, it actually has been disingenuous to me to have hearings for the public to have input, but then be voting on maps that nobody has ever seen. And so the gentleman has an amendment right now for a map that has been vetted. Whatever you may think about it, whether you support it or not, it was a part of the public hearings, the gentleman's amendment for his map. Folks had an opportunity to listen to him, see it in advance before we came to session, unlike the map that we're going to vote on today. And so again, it's the process too that really bothers me. I did one of those personality tests long time ago, and so evidently I have a social justice type personality, you know, and when I see injustice, it really enrages me. And I don't care who it is. You know, if I feel like somebody or someone or a group of folks are not being treated justly, it just really burns me up. It really makes me want to fight harder. Again, I'm always, you know, looking for, the underdog. And in this particular situation, we have an opportunity to do what's right in the state of Alabama by doing just what the Supreme Court has said. There are almost 28% African Americans in the state of Alabama. Supreme Court has said those numbers justify having two majority minority districts in the state of Alabama. But yet we are here today with a map, not talking about the gentleman's amendment, but with a map that only has one majority minority district. So, you know, I was thinking about this, and I don't really practice a lot of criminal law, but I was talking to one of my colleagues last night in the House that does. That's what he does. And he said, you know, what would happen, you know, if one of my clients just decided just to not adhere to a court order? You know, this body itself would be saying, lock him or her up, lock him up, lock him up. But here we are right now in this body getting ready to defy a court order when the Supreme Court has said that we are justified in the state of Alabama for having 2 minority-majority districts. But yet the Pringle map and the Livingston map do not. They have 1 majority-minority district. And when we talk about, you know, the gentleman from Jefferson County, we come from the same county, which we've had made some, I mean, in Jefferson County, it's been amazing how African Americans have fared in Jefferson, and we're not the minority, not the majority population, but we are at 45%. And so we have an African American sheriff, and two African American district attorneys, because we actually have 2 counties within one. Most of our judges are African American. So even at that 45%, African Americans have been able to choose the candidate of their choice in Jefferson County. Now, that's not really reflective of the rest of the state of Alabama. That's just one county where that has happened. But here, the original version of the Pringle map was at 42% under the number. And then now we're talking about 38%, which does not get us to the language in the order which says quite close to a majority minority district. I mean, I contend that the only way that African Americans have a real shot of choosing their candidate of choice is if we have 2 districts that have 50% or more of Black voting age population. But you need to delve even deeper than that. Senator Smitherman keeps talking about functionality, and that's really performance. How do African Americans fare, or what's the potential of an African American or the candidate of the African American community's choice faring? And when we got that, and I meant to bring it up here with me, the printout that the senator provided us earlier today, I could not tell anything about what was going on. There was performance for Republicans and Democrats, but there was no performance for African Americans in that functionality or not functionality report, however you want to categorize it. But every single one of those, and again, we don't even know what election it was. We don't know if this was in 2022 or when. But when you looked at the performance, and again, theirs was not broken down in race, just broken down by party affiliation. Not one Democrat, if you're making the assumption that the African Americans would support Democrats. That's the assumption you would have to make, I guess, from his functionality report or non-functionality report. Their candidate of choice would never win, not in one situation. And so why are we even sending or potentially sending maps to the 3-judge panel that have no proof or no backing that African Americans would have the opportunity to choose the candidate of their choice? It's perplexing to me that we would defy a court order, and not only defy it, show the proof right there, live and in living color, that these folks will not be able to be successful and to perform. And I got up here really to ask you a question about your amendment. I've said it already, but did your amendment, your maps, have the opportunity to be presented to the people of the state of Alabama?
Yes.
Thank you. Did the people of the state of Alabama have an opportunity to make comment or come and testify about the map that you presented.
Yes, on 2 occasions.
Thank you. And if I was in a court of law, I would say, with that, Your Honor, I have no further questions because that is the point.
Yes.
That several of these maps have had the opportunity to be vetted by the public, for them to come and testify, to make comment, but yet we're getting ready to vote on some maps today that have not been properly vetted.
Period. At all.
And you know, you were when you were talking, you said something about you don't know how many pages, you know, the map might, you know, the bill itself might come back to. I will never forget. Was it the school choice bill?
AAA.
Ooh, went into conference, a 3-page bill.
Came out 30.
And what, you know, even when we were asking, I was in the House, I was not up here in the Senate.
Right.
Asking the colleagues, you know, do y'all know what's in this bill? They didn't even know what's in it, but how irresponsible to vote for something that you didn't even get a chance to read or vet. And that's what's getting ready to happen again today.
Exactly.
And then as a result of that, and some other ones that we have, haven't we had to kind of come and clean stuff up because there were some unintended consequences?
We're cleaning up some House bills and stuff right now because of people setting rules they want to set.
Again, so that's what I just can't understand why we would go through this again. And I say we, I keep saying we, and I hate when the press, I know the press is watching, I hate when you all say what the Alabama legislature did, because some of us didn't do it. I would like for you all to kind of split that up and say what the supermajority of the Alabama legislature did, instead of pigeonholing us, because we get it. Somebody has attacked me on social media about what the legislature did, and it was the supermajority that did it, not the minority party. And so I really wish you all would split that up so you would let people know what happens here so we all don't get blamed. And because what we're gonna all get blamed for is the legislature not doing what the Supreme Court has told it to do, going to the 3-judge panel, and if they also agree that we did not do what we were supposed to do, then a special master will have to draw the map. And this is my issue, and this is why I don't understand why my colleagues on the right are not thinking about this. The special master can draw these maps any kind of way. They don't care where Congresswoman Sewell lives or any of our other members of Congress live. They don't, you know, they're the things that we kind of care about. Some people have talked about whole counties, you know, communities of and all kinds of things that folks have talked about that they particularly care about. Special master didn't know any of us individually. Special master, I mean, I would dare to say all 7 of the congressional districts could be messed with. And so that's why I think it's irresponsible for the supermajority not to do what it was supposed to do, especially when we had maps available that adhered to the court order. So earlier I said no further questions. So at this point, I guess I will say no further comment. And thank the gentleman for all that you have done and the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister.
Thanks, Senator Coleman.
Thank you, my colleagues from Jefferson. You're absolutely right. You know, we're now trying to give at least a map up to where the public has vetted. You know, the public has vetted the map that we have up before you now. The public has questioned it. We've given functionality reports that's on the record that goes with these maps. We've come here to testify. We've brought the maps out before you. There's nothing that's hidden about it. You know, we're just trying to make sure that we can at least get a map that will allow Democrats the right to be able to have the opportunity to elect the person of their choice. Right now, the way this CD2 is set up, to where 12 points has been in it by President Trump won it last time. Dexter Grimsley lost in that. Representative Grimsley lost in that area of the state. Senator Beasley is there, the only other Democrats that's in that area of the state that has been successful. in you breaking up the black belt in two separate districts when I think that the black belt is stronger where all of the counties are connected. Or as many of those counties together as connected as possible, so we can have a core to where we need to run that work together when you talk about a community of interest. And I think that breaking them up, giving CD2 in that particular map, the Livingston map, is going to be just detrimental. It is a map for us to not get elected. To not have the opportunity to do what we want to do. It is that kind of a map. But the map before you now, again, sits out with all the traditional redistricting principles, compactness, wholeness, whole county, making sure we did unnecessary splits, but maybe 6 splits in the map, which gives us the opportunity to be able to achieve the purpose that we want to, that satisfies the Voting Rights Act. And that's why we had to do those few splits that we did. We're there, we did it without gerrymandering. One of the districts is a 55% Democratic lean, and the other one is a 59% Democratic lean. And the only place that we know that are blue is Jefferson County and the Black Belt are the only counties that are turning blue in the presidential election in this state. And this is our best opportunity to give for those 2 districts is one come out of Jefferson and the other one go across the Alabama Black Belt, keeping it whole all the way from the Sumter County line all the way over to just outside of Russell County. I wanted to say all the way to the Georgia line. I wish we could have taken it all the way over, which would be a large district, but yet it's still, you know, we need to work through that process, have a person out there who just concentrate on the black belt and the black belt only that can go out there and make sure that the people get a voice from the black belt, making sure that people get a voice from Jefferson. And that's the way it used to be. That's where it used to be. Since Reconstruction, Jefferson County had its own district. The black belt was its own congressional district, and because of the fact that all the large landowners at that time came out of the black belt, and the black belt basically kind of was king. Cotton was king in the state. Black belt farmers were king, so therefore they were making the laws of the state. And so eventually people started cutting into it, splitting the black belt up, splitting the counties up, split into Jefferson, split Jefferson up 4, 5, 6 different ways, all diluted the voting strength of the Jefferson County Coalition and the Black Belt Coalition when you went in there and started to split us up. So this map that's before you today will allow us to be able to bring Jefferson County in as whole, where you're going to get the best opportunity for crossover votes, and bring it in the Black Belt to where you have the best opportunity for crossover votes there also. And so when you look at it, again, these are the areas that are continuing to turn blue in the state of Alabama. It's in Jefferson. Jefferson has won the last, since 2008, whether it was presidential, U.S. Senator, House of Representative, Jefferson has turned blue. Governor, lieutenant governor, it all turned blue. And when you look in the black belt, those counties in the black belt, regardless of whether you're looking at the governor's race, lieutenant governor race, you know, sheriff race, it has turned blue across the black belt. So we know where the blue counties are. We know where the counties are, which will give us those opportunities. So that's the district that we're asking for. Is the district. Why not have that district? Because that is the best district it allows us to. No, it doesn't connect Jefferson and the black belt, and I know that a lot of people want that to continue to happen, but something has to happen to give us the real strength and voice that we need. We need to separate those two. But the black belt needs its own individual person to be able to speak for the black belt. Jefferson needs its own individual person who can be able to speak for Jefferson. And I think that you get the best out of this two, and that's where we should be lying at. That's where the best numbers are. That's where the best opportunities are. That's where you're going to get your crossover votes from. That's where people who understand the ability to be able to move forward, and people who have been voting across racial lines, is in Jefferson County and in the black belt. That's where we need to go. That's where these maps need to fall into. Because those are the only lines and the only counties that are turning blue in the state of Alabama during the presidential race from 2008 up until this day, and that's where we need to be. So that's what this map does. The map that I have before you that you're going to be voting on here in the next 10 minutes or so, it satisfies. And I think that if this map is adopted by this body, this court order goes away. It just goes away. We won't even see it no more in 2014. I think the court would take everything away from the rights for them to come back and even have this full trial, because we could take this and have it right, and it would last and be sustainable for the future. It would last and be sustainable for the future. It's something that we can see down the road, not just only this election, but the next election for the next 10 years, we'll still be in the same place. And this is where your demographic is going to be. You're not going to get a lot of that to change. Jefferson's going to continue. You're beginning to see Huntsville beginning to turn purple. And, you know, things are changing. Whether you want to know it or not, it is changing. And so you might as well go on and allow us to have that voice now. That voice is the voice of the people. We're people also. We're taxpaying citizens. African Americans has contributed to this country. We've contributed to the state. Our contribution has been not only just the ability to go and work in somebody's fields, but also the ability to create, design, develop, and in being able to invent. We've been here. Yeah.
You need a water?
Yeah. We're here, and we're here to stay. So we're not going anywhere. So you might as well go on and just break down. Let's have this voice. Give us this voice. I know sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable because they borderline the conversation of race. And a lot of people don't want to talk about race, you know? So here we are. You know, it's something about the skin that I'm in that don't nobody want to continue to appreciate the contributions that we give to this country. Maybe it's something about the skin that I'm in that I don't know anything about. Maybe other folk know about it, because there should not be a problem with my colleagues wanting to give me a voice. Just to say, go ahead, y'all can have this voice. Have a voice to speak. You're still in the supermajority. You're going to still be the supermajority. And we're going to be here. So all I'm saying is, the map that we have before us will give us that voice. I'll take any of the map. You can take the VRA map. You can take the Hatchet map. You can take, you know, any of the maps that we have up on this side, the single congressional plan 1 or 2. I don't care which one we would take. We would be better off than this Livingston map that we got. We'll make sure that we at least will have some voices. You got opportunities off this side that you could be able to look at. We ain't got to go back and redraw. They already drawn for us. We got functionality reports for all of our maps. We have the functionality reports. We can show you where they function. We can show you there's more than one way to skin this cat. Let's do it. Let's just go sit down and make it work. That's all we got to do. If you respect me enough in my humanity, then you should respect me enough to have a voice. Give us our voice. We ain't just here playing with y'all. We for real. We come here to look out for our communities, for our people, and we're state senators also. And we were given the task to be able to come here, draw some maps for the sake of our state moving forward. Why shouldn't we have voices in Washington? Because they up there playing Washington games. And we down here, all we got to do is just do the right thing. Let's just do the right thing. Let's make it work for the people of the state of Alabama. I'm sorry, Mr. President, I had to get a little shot of water there.
Mr. President.
Senator Smotherman.
Can I request the gentleman let me dialogue with him?
Sure.
Yes, sir, please.
Okay. Senator, I have a copy of this map.
Yes, sir.
And that's what I went back to get. And I think that we have provided enough information for it to be clear that that the map that's before us, not your sub, but the map that the Livingston 2, that's what it's called, that it does not and will not perform in a manner that will provide an opportunity for if you heard me read out of the orders that they talked about that the minority, they even at one time said the black voters would have an opportunity to elect the person of their choice. And in that, it talked about, it made a statement about that the makeup of the district should not be of such that a block of white voters in their patterns and tradition and in their voting would not exist to the point where it would not be an African American, a Democrat, a minority would not have a ghost of a chance. They didn't use the words ghost of a chance, but a ghost of a chance to have an election. We made that clear in this Livingston plan in that District 2. You made it clear as Mama Apple Pie. You know, I made the effort to make it clear as well. And what stands out the most, one of the most clear indicators, was simply this, is that out of the makeup of that district over the last, I would go back to when you went back. You went back to 2008, I think. 08. I just only went back to 2012. But since 2008, there have been only 2 Democrats. We ain't even talking about African Americans, only 2 African Americans. We're saying that there's been only 2 Democrats that have received a significant number of votes in that area. No, it was in 2012 when I think President Obama received something like 45% in that district. And it was when Doug Jones ran in 2020 when he received, I think, like 40-something% of that vote. Other than that, there hasn't been any numbers that high for any Democrat in that district. But yet, and then I'm on yield to you, yet it clearly showed that when President Trump ran, he won by 12%. He got 62% of the vote out of that district, which, you know, I mean, I don't have any problem with him getting the 62% of the vote. The problem is that district will not break, it's not going to break away from the 62% of the vote for the majority party in here, which is the Republican Party. They're not getting ready to change that. So you can, if you put 62, it almost is a marriage of the percentage that you see, that you saw. 38, the last time I counted, 38 and 62 is 100.
There you go.
So if the 62 with the president, which showed it now, I mean, it showed it is what it is. And we talking about the district as it's being constitutionally made up. We talking about this district. See, that's what I want to make clear, is that when you said District 2, the people said, well, that was District 2 back when he ran, and yada, yada. No. The numbers that we are talking about is the functionality, this portion of the functionality report that we were able to ascertain.
Yes.
We didn't get it from the committee. Okay, we didn't get it from a real portion committee. We didn't get anything from the attorneys on that side. Not the attorneys, but the people who draw their maps. We didn't get anything from them. We hadn't got anything from that department, but we were able to get a small bird's eye view of being able to see what that district looks like right now as we stand at these mics. And as we stand at these mics, President Trump would have gotten 12%, won by a 12% margin over 50. And that, as a result of that, then I'm still searching for what's called an opportunity, except for the opportunity that you mentioned a few minutes ago. And that's the opportunity to lose. That's what this is. You know, and it's I mean, let me say this. You know, it is what it is, first of all. And this is an effort by somebody. That's all I can say, somebody. To preserve status quo, fix that district for that Congressperson still can win it.
Yes.
But give a show, a cosmetic show to the courts like we did what you said do. And they know that district ain't got no opportunity for nobody to win except the incumbent, and 62% of them is solidly for the party, which is good. That's good for them. That's good for them. Don't get me wrong. I am not saying, I'm gonna make myself clear. I'm not trying to say, well, something wrong for them. But the bill said that you got to have an opportunity for us. That's what it says. And ain't no opportunity there for us as Democrats or as African Americans to have a ghost of a chance. So there's no way that you can claim the fame that meets what the court said, because you can't talk about compactness, and you can't talk about which it doesn't do for the black belt and for the community of interest. It's a conflict right there with compactness and community of interest.
Yeah.
For the sake of compactness, you're splitting up community of interest.
Yes.
You know, so that it's you can brag on compactness, and then community interest, you just that's a shot. Okay. So see, and let me tell you something else. There's something else. It's a 3-pronged test.
Uh-oh.
See, and any one of them prong that ain't pronging is wronging. That's what you have. That's what you got. And so, I mean, that's in order now. I'm just trying to tell people this in the orders. People think I'm sitting up and just chit-chatting and saying my opinion, editorial opinion. No, I'm telling you what's in the orders. This is not my opinion. This is that court's opinion. And so that's, I just wanted to say that this plan that you have meets that requirements above and beyond. But above and beyond, it keeps Jefferson County whole. That goes what? Community of interest.
Yes.
They're playing bust up, wide open, in the biggest area of community interest we have in the state, the largest county. You talking about splitting up communities of interest. You doing it left and right in that county. Then you're still talking about the same thing. This plan takes care of that. The community of interest in the black belt.
Yes.
This plan takes care of that.
Yes.
It doesn't bust it up. It doesn't split it up or anything. And it provides an opportunity for them, for citizens who are minorities or Democrats, African Americans can have an opportunity to succeed in picking a candidate of their choice as well. So I wholly support this map. I support it for the whole county concept. I support it for the community of interest concept. I support it for the opportunity to be, this is in my opinion, the best opportunity districts and the map that provides the request and the guidelines and the requirements that the court has set out among any of the maps. I like the percentages that's in District 7, you know, and I like those. They're very good percentages. And I'm not even talking about the opportunity. The opportunity is out the roof in that one. But the percentages are good, very, very, very good in that district. And those percentages are very good in 6. and of course the opportunity it provides. So I'm looking for the time that when we have the vote that I'll be able to vote for this and support it, and just want to have an opportunity to share that with you, that this should be the map
Thank you.
that this state operates under, to number one, meet the requirements of the court, and to do just what you were saying earlier. You know, look, we got a state with 20, you want to say 28% of their people are not even at the table.
Thank you.
As we sit here now and get ready to go into the conference, when those doors are open, that's going to be the first impression, the very first impression of that document. You and I had nothing to do with the composition of that document. We didn't even get a chance to have an editorial comment while it was being made. So I don't see how they can say if that document becomes law that's what it'd be nice to be truthful to the court and say that this is what the majority decide to send you, because we are not a part of the composition of it, and it doesn't address why we're in court in the first place.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to go on and give a minute of closing, and then we will call for this vote and get ready for the vote. If you're in the office, you want to come back and take this vote. This is a serious matter. I've worked through this process for some years. We filed this lawsuit because we thought it was the best thing to do. While the Singleton case went before the Merrill Singleton case, and then the Casters and the Millikens joined in under a Voter Right Act claim, and we was on a constitutional claim. And the court heard the Millikens Voter Right Act claim, and this is how we got where we are now. And so, the right to vote is precious, you know, and I was born in the 1960s, 1962, so I understand growing up in you know, feeling the aftermath of that era, and seeing my folks go through that, and just to be toiling about the right to vote. I was at the museum over here just the other day, and I ran across that voting right section where they had the jelly beans sitting on the table, and asked the questions, how many jelly beans is in the jar? You know, and it was asking questions, and I was intending to bring one of those tests out here today so I could ask some of y'all some of those questions, see what you have been able to answer those questions that my people had to answer, whether or not they could be registered to vote or not today. And it was asking questions about Congress and whether or not, you know, how many, you know, where's the congressman from, and does he eat green beans or not? You know, that's just crazy question that somebody wouldn't possibly know, you know, and not allowing people to have the right to vote. So we're sitting here now with the right to vote, but we also want to have that voice with the right to vote, to where you hear me and I hear you. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us better, because we can listen to each other. But if you're just at the table by yourself, you don't have nobody to contrast what it is that you think you know. And so that's why diversity is so important, so that we can be able to look other people in the eyes and respect their humanity also. And so that's all we're asking for. You know, we didn't ask for a whole lot in this country with all the stuff we're going through. All we've been asking for is equity, just to be equal, just to have some equality, just to be able to be respected, and to be able to have a voice. That's all we're asking for. I don't think that's too much. But obviously, other folks think it is too much. And so with that, Mr. President,
Wait.
you want,
If I could be just,
Okay.
President, could I be recognized?
You're recognized.
All right, thank you. I just want to briefly say this. When you start talking, you brought back a few sort of special memories, I'm not saying happy memories, but special thoughts to my mind, and I just kind of want to just express them with you a little bit. You know, I haven't had the opportunity in life, as I've had that opportunity, to be a part of integration, the very first part of integration in this state since Reconstruction, okay? And you know what Reconstruction was?
yes, sir.
It was when, prior to Reconstruction, we had representatives in Congress of that nature prior to Reconstruction, okay? I want to make sure that everybody hear that this ain't some new novel thing that we're trying to say that we ought to have representation. We had representation in Congress. We had the kind of representation that we, and I don't know if that was enough then, but we had it. Now, I said that because when you walk in my Senate office, now when we come back out here from break, I may bring it. I don't do nothing but set it on my desk on the side. I'm gonna bring the picture because it's the picture of the last African Americans who served in the Alabama legislature, who represented Alabama in Congress before Reconstruction.
Gotcha.
The last ones. Since that time, we've gone through a metamorphosis of a state to the point that it was the late 60s. It's the late 60s. I understand. I understand. That's why I'm going to be short with what I'm saying. Is that we went through a metamorphosis of in the late 60s to see the need to try to come back toward this way. We had integration in 60, I think 68, Jim Crow was legal. That meant it was segregation. In 69, Jim Crow was illegal. So from that point, technically from that point up until this time, we have been trying to march forward to just get back to where we were as a people prior to Reconstruction. Yet, these kind of maps is an effort to make sure that that don't happen. Even in the light of what the courts have said, it should happen, an opportunity. But yet, we keep challenging what we need to be doing, and that's the opportunity. So I just want to kind of express those thoughts that have come back to my mind regarding those issues, and just to say again that the way we can get to where we should have been all along is through the passage of your map, and of course that being implemented into the laws of the state of Alabama. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank
Commissioner Smotherman.
you, Mr. President. With that, I'm going to call for the roll call vote on the Singleton Amendment.
Using the long roll.
Use a long roll.
All right, Secretary, call the long roll, please.
Mr. Albritton. Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot. Mr. Beasley. Mr. Bill. Mr. Butler. Mr. Conley. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chasteen. Ms. Coleman. Ms. Coleman Madison. Mr. Elliott. Ms. Figures. Mr. Gavan. Mr. Gudger. Mr. Hatcher. Mr. Hovey. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Livingston. Mr. Melson. Mr. Orr. Mr. Price. Mr. Reed. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Schofield. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Shelnut. Mr. Singleton.
Aye.
Mr. Smitherman. Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stutz. Mr. Wagner. Ms. Weaver. Mr. Williams.
All right, 6 ayes, 22 nays. The Senator Singleton amendment fails.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Singleton. All right, Senator Figures.
Mr. President, thank you. I have an amendment as well.
Okay, Secretary read and receive the amendment, please.
Amendment to the substitute for House Bill 5 by Senator Figures. Replace line 202 on page 8 with the following. Figures Congressional Plan 1-2023, including the.
Mr. President,
Senator Figures.
as everyone knows, this is the plaintiff's Voting Rights Act remedial plan. And I would just like to, I've already said my comments on it time and time again, so I would like to offer it and ask for a vote, please. Long roll, please.
Okay. All right, Secretary, call the long roll, please.
Mr. Albritton. Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot. Mr. Beasley. Mr. Bell. Mr. Butler. Mr. Carnley. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chasteen. Ms. Coleman. Ms. Coleman Madison. Mr. Elliott. Ms. Figures.
Aye.
Mr. Gavan. Mr. Gudger. Mr. Hatcher. Mr. Hovey. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Livingston. Mr. Melson. Mr. Orr. Mr. Price. Mr. Reed. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Schofield. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Shelnut. Mr. Singleton. Mr. Smitherman. Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stutz. Mr. Wagner. Ms. Weaver. Mr. Williams.
Six ayes, 23 nays. The Senator Figures amendment fails.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members of the Senate.
Thanks, Senator Figures. All right, Senator Smitherman.
Like to offer amendment.
All right, Secretary, read and receive the amendment, please.
Amendment to House Bill 5 by Senator Smitherman. Replace lines 19 through 21 on page 1 with the following. Thereafter, until the release of the next federal census. Delete lines 23 through 192 on page 1 through 7 and renumber the remaining sections accordingly. Replace line 202 on page 8 with the following. Smitherman Congressional Plan 1-2023, including the.
All right, Senator Smitherman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I've gone over the extensive aspects of this plan earlier. The need to put it in is because we have a bill that's before us, that's the House bill. And even though I know it's been substituted by Senator Livingston, however, we are addressing a brand new bill. But I'll be brief when I say this. This plan, number one, is a whole county plan. This plan keeps Jefferson County whole intact. This plan is a zero deviation plan. And this plan has, along with the previous plan that Senator Singleton had, those two plans have the highest performance of opportunity in the Opportunity District than any plan that's been put before us. So with that in mind, I will ask the body to give favorable report to this plan and that it meets all those requirements and then more as it relates to what the orders have for us and ask for the long roll.
All right, Secretary, call the long roll, please.
Mr. Albritton. Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot. Mr. Beasley. Mr. Bell. Mr. Butler. Mr. Carnley. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chastain. Ms. Coleman. Ms. Coleman Madison. Mr. Elliott. Ms. Figures. Mr. Gavan. Mr. Gudger. Mr. Hatcher. Mr. Hovey. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Livingston. Mr. Melson. Mr. Orr. Mr. Price. Mr. Reed. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Schofield. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Shelnut. Mr. Singleton. Mr. Smitherman. Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stutz. Mr. Wagner. Ms. Weaver. Mr. Williams.
Six ayes, 23 nays. The Senator Smitherman amendment fails.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for members allowing me to present this great opportunity that it seems to have been missed to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Smitherman.
Mr. President.
All right, Senator
Mr.
Chambliss.
President, with that, I will move final passage using the long roll.
All right. Senator Singleton, you want to talk? Are we good?
No,
All right,
go
Secretary, call the long roll.
Mr. Albritton. Mr. Allen. Mr. Barfoot. Mr. Beasley. Mr. Bell. Mr. Butler. Mr. Carnley. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chastain. Ms. Coleman. Ms. Coleman Madison. Mr. Elliott. Ms. Figures. Mr. Gavan. Mr. Gudger. Mr. Hatcher. Mr. Hovey. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Livingston. Mr. Melson. Mr. Orr. Mr. Price. Mr. Reed. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Schofield. Mr. Sessions. Mr. Shelnut. Mr. Singleton. Mr. Smitherman. Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stutz. Mr. Wagner. Ms. Weaver. Mr. Williams.
Twenty-three ayes, 7 nays. House Bill 5 passes amended. All right, Senator Reed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and ladies and gentlemen of the body, we've been at the task this morning. Thank you again for your efforts. At this point, recognize as we've moved through this process, we now have a conference committee that has 3 of our members that is deliberating with our House colleagues. So that process is going to begin, I think, about this time. So at this point, I think we're going to make a motion that we come back, make a motion to recess at the call of the chair, but anticipate coming back about 1:30 today. And that'll give our folks an opportunity to finalize the meetings and prepare things for us to come back. But again, Mr. President, the motion is call of the chair with an expectation of 1:30.
All right, got a motion to recess the call of the chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we stand in recess.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Reed.